This afternoon we'll be talking about ABCDE model. This is from Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy. It's another branch of CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. But with all the biblical principles and philosophies we get from the teachings of Jesus Christ, it's just an application of what we have been discussing in the morning, this morning and last night. This is a very good tool for those who are wondering how to move on. Now that we have, some of you did the work, now that you have identified some of your wounds, what's next? Okay? Remember the four blocks that we've discussed in building emotional resilience, the innocent freedom, that's faith, hope, and love. Okay, we know that. And then the chaos and the wounds that caused by this chaos. And then what's next? The time that you're writing your story, that's part of emptiness, of letting go. And I hope there's a way how to let go. And I'm going to add more tools for you to let go of some of the things that you have built throughout the years, especially things that burdened you or trapped you inside our own, our man-made built traps and cells. And hopefully, we'll find some wisdom in doing this. As you can see, we have the ABCDE here, and we will be talking about each of this letter in details as we go on. First, all we know is A equals C. What do I mean by that? Activating event equals consequence. For example, if I'm sexually abused as a child, now I have a finger to point to. That's my A, and that's why I'm like this. So that's a simple explanation. If I'm misbehaving, if I'm acting out, I can easily say, poor me, it's because of the A. The activating event made me promiscuous, for example. A simple story of my life. But that is the victim mentality. The activating event is very, very sad. Don't get me wrong. No one deserves to be abused sexually, emotionally, verbally, whatever kind of abuse. We don't deserve that as human beings. Okay? But it's very easy to point to the activating event and say, this is my story. A equals C. The consequence of I'm showing or experiencing or living right now is because of A, period. This morning I have shared with you that the traumatic event is one thing, trauma is another thing. So if you were abused as a child, a very sad, traumatic event, did you get a chance to come to a person who could provide safety, security, assurance, redemption, relief, recovery at that moment? If the answer is no, if the answer is if you kept that inside of you and suppress every single emotions that you're expected to experience. For example, anger, of course. It's natural for someone who's hurt to express anger. Why? Anger is a God-given emotion to send a message that says, this is my response to the injustice that I have experienced. This is my response to things that are not fair. If you are at some point being angry, okay, it is a message within you that says something is not fair. That message has a point. to let you know that boundaries have been crossed. But sometimes we are living in a culture where expressing anger is bad. For example, if a child is angry, sometimes the consequence is timeout, meaning you're not free to express your anger. You're just a child. But when will this child let you know that something has been crossed, a boundary has been crossed, if they are not allowed to be angry? So they learn at an early age to suppress their emotion. Sorrow is when you have lost something. Of course, God has given us this radar, these responses to something that is not expected, Grief and sorrow when you lose something. Fear. Fear is when all of a sudden the goodness in other person all of a sudden becomes evil. Can I really trust this person? And fear will tell me, not quite easy. Don't stop for a moment. Because a child, you just see everybody, there's goodness in everyone. It's just part of the DNA, as we have discussed a while ago. Fear is a part of the process for us to eventually have wisdom. When Adam and Eve disobeyed God, there is fear, shame. Who taught them that? Is it because of sin? No, as God created beings, that's part of God's DNA, because we know that we have some responses when things all of a sudden change in a way where we're not expecting. The natural response of Adam and Eve is to suppress things and hide. But God, even in that time, knows that the best therapy is for us to name it right away. Remember the Garden of Eden? Adam, Eve, where are you? Let's talk about this. Don't hide. Because there is healing in addressing shame, fear, anger, sorrow. These are just the bells. But there is a message behind this. And in a very short chapter in the scriptures, we found out that behind fear, behind shame, there is woundedness in Adam and Eve. Brothers and sisters, sometimes culture and society takes that away from us. So when we experience a traumatic event, it's not the traumatic event that's affecting us. It is the trauma. And we will be discussing about that trauma. It is not A, it is actually B that makes me feel the consequence. What is B? Belief. But let's try to understand, okay? As simple as criticism. If you are a child, if in your childhood, if you were raised in a very critical environment, mom, dad, sisters, brothers, if everyone has something bad to say about you, of course, you will experience different kinds of hurt feelings and wounds. And it's very easy to say, it is because of the criticism, that's why I'm acting out this way, the consequence. That's why I'm angry at the world. Or that's why I have phobia and fear. or that's why I have despair or depression. A person whose relationship with self is wounded. Remember, this morning we were talking about love thy neighbor as thyself. So in this equation, there is a relationship with myself and there's relationship with you. And what gets wounded is not just my relationship with you, even if you criticize me. If you criticize me, sometimes I tend to protect my relationship with you at the expense of violating my relationship with myself. So, if I trusted the words coming from you, since, let's say, if you are my care provider, my parents, or my protector, my nourisher, I would trust whatever you say as a child. So if you keep on saying that I'm not going to amount to anything good, I'm dumb or stupid, such criticism, if I start to believe that, now, in my mind, I'm using a lens based on what I experienced. That's true, it's a traumatic event, but I'm building a lens that would, if I examine myself, there's only one conclusion. I'm a bad person, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, and it's very despairing. Environment, critical, parents, or whoever's in the family, the result could be despair. But not every individual in that environment would experience despair. Some, instead of despair, would experience anger. And this is usually when the relationship with others is what's wounded. Oh, members of this family are critical. Maybe the whole world is there to get me. They're very critical. So, I might not be experiencing despair, but I'm building a lens of resentment. A lens that says, I cannot trust anyone here. Everyone here is to get me. There's nothing good they see in me. I know I can do something good. They just don't see it. Let me show them. And this is one of the examples I used this morning. People who tend to be perfectionists are trying to prove to the world that you all don't get me. But you're here just to get me, but to criticize me. So I'm going to show you that I am better than you. So in everything I do, I want to make sure there is perfection. Because that's how I get back to you. That you're wrong. But that's the foundation of that is anger. So two people may be coming from the same home. One experiences anger, one experiences despair. But same activating event. So if the same activating event, therefore A doesn't equal C, because there are different C's. One is experiencing despair, the other one is experiencing anger. But what you experience is fear. Okay? You're living in a critical place, same activating event, but you develop certain phobia. Fear, either of others, or of the world, or of yourself. And therefore, you decided just to live in the forest as an hermit. Or if you're in the city, you build your own space where you cut relationship, the sense of isolation, the sense of loneliness. You would rather be lonely than experience relating with others who are critical because of fear of experiencing the wound and the hurt. Same activating event, different kinds of consequence. Now, I just want to throw this, it's not in my slides. There are many people who didn't build a certain wall that led them to feel anger, despair, or fear. There are still many people who survive critical parents and critical siblings, and as if, and they look fine, okay? In other words, there are different kinds of consequences with the same activating event. But the way we build the belief system depends on individuals. So, it is not, just want to emphasize this, it's not the activating event. It is not the traumatic event that makes you promiscuous or whatever acting out you're doing. It is the belief, okay? So, if a child feels like, well, I was sexually abused when I was a child, and it gave pleasure to the person who was abusing me, as a child, with all of their very limited understanding of the world, the child needs to be accepted and needs to be loved because that's where they're coming from, that DNA. If the walls that's built is like, maybe I would experience the same opioid in our system, the endorphins, okay? When a child is being wanted and being needed in the context of being used as a sex toy, for example, they end up getting addicted to the very thing that has wounded them. Not because of the traumatic event, because of the belief that they eventually, it's already there, but it's twisted. The belief that says, I will be wanted and I will be needed, and my contribution so that I can continue to be needed is to present my body to others. It's the belief. Now, it's not just the sexually child abuse case. It could be as a pastor, for example. If no one was trusting or loving or believing in me as a child, and then I found a system where I hear praises and love from others by serving, by preaching, by teaching, my endorphins is coming back. The endorphins that I am supposed to experience when a mother is tickling me as a baby, and when that attachment, when that solidarity, when that bond was naturally experienced as God has designed, if that has been taken away and I was looking for that experience and then I found it through my job, now I can experience more love from people by doing best of what I can do to them, Self is another form of getting back the endorphins that I was not experiencing, but looking for, because I was designed to look for that endorphins, because that is a love energy. It makes people happy whenever they are bonded, but that was twisted along the way. And I've seen many pastors who are exhausted. Pastors who no longer know who they are because they've been they thought it's just service. It's called pastoral work. They thought it was service. But they've been giving self day in, day out at the expense sometimes of their family. I've seen many family of pastors, especially children, who ended up rebelling against their parents because the parents has sacrificed the needs of the children because unknowingly they thought they were just serving, but they were addicted to service, addicted to something that is great and wonderful. It's a virtue, but it is a form that gives them what they lack growing up. Okay? So it doesn't matter where you are. Your addiction could be work. Your addiction could be shopping, because again, the endorphins comes back. It could be gambling. It could be alcohol. It could be position. It could be power. You know. Unfortunately, nowadays, we criminalize those who are using illegal drugs, and yet we glorify those who are addicted to power. It's an uneven playing field. But we have the same way of building a particular lens that distorted our understanding of the original freedom that God has given us. So, many activating events, many consequences. I just want to emphasize, it is not the activating event that leads you to do certain ways as a consequence, or give you feeling a certain way because of the activating event. Feeling and your doing are consequences, yes, but not because of the activating event, but because of the belief that you have been building throughout the years when you had experienced maybe a traumatic event. If you would talk, my dad passed away. If you would talk to my dad would have no idea, have zero idea that I was, in a sense, abandoned by my dad, but I had experienced that. Did my dad really abandon me as a child? As the only boy in the family? It felt like it. But I was the one who built those beliefs. And through that lens, it made me feel distant to my dad. That belief. It's not my dad. It's the belief that I built. And it's quite relieving, and liberating and freedom to understand that, okay, so it's my belief. It's not my dad. I mean, my dad has his own wounds, and he was just responding to the whatever has been passed from one generation to another. If he has some intention, it's not expressed, but I know that he has no idea to hurt me, no intention to hurt me as a child. So, the paper that you receive, the intention is to examine your story. And in this story, as you write, I hope you will identify in a form, in a way, in a form, to see the kind of beliefs that you do have built throughout the years. Let me quote an example in the scriptures that it's the belief that led this particular person to suffer, okay? To suffer. Do you know Jacob? He has a twin brother named Esau. Okay. The doctrine, in a sense, that he heard from mom is this: you're not good enough. You have to be skillful so that your father can recognize you. Because your brother has won your father's heart. And the bond of Jacob and his mom was so close. Maybe in the area of love, he's thriving. But in the area of hope and significance, because he's distant from the dad, he was starving. And he became so skillful. He studied what's brother's weakness and what his dad's weakness. And the only thing that inspired him to trick his brother and to trick his dad is that he's not good enough. So he has to trick his brother to get the birthright from the brother. And he has to trick the father to get the birthright, to be good enough. And you know what? How to be good enough? For him to be good enough, he has to pretend that he is Esau and not Jacob. And sometimes that is the kind of pretension that we're doing. We were hoping to be someone else, because without that, we're not good enough. And it doesn't have to be someone else. Sometimes it's the role. If I can only be a doctor, then I'll be better, the role. If I can only be a manager, then maybe I'm going to be a better person, the role. If I can be an elder in the church, if I'm going to be a pastor, if I'm going to be, a treasurer, a certain position. We want to be someone else, because just looking at us, when we face the mirror, sometimes all we see is, I'm not good enough. Now, what is the activating event for Jacob? Is it the distant and favoritism that he experienced from father, that Isaac would prefer to have Esau when they go hunting? Is it that? Or the belief that he has built throughout the years? One day, he already has kids. He has already, a big family, a few concubines. The tribe is getting bigger. He's known as a leader. And yet his insecurity kept him up one night. He's going to meet his brother. He knows his brother is hunting him because of the sins that he had in the past. So that insecurity is just overwhelming. But it's not just his relationship with his brother that's broken. His relationship with himself is broken. So, one night, he saw an angel that he felt like this must be God. This is my opportunity. So he jumped and wrestled with this guy. I mean, you know the story. An angel. He believes that this is a divine being. And I need to redeem myself this time. I'm going to ask this person for a blessing. Imagine his whole entire life. I don't know how old was he when he wrestled with this angel, but his whole entire life, she is needing a blessing of significance, that he matters in this world. Something that he thought he already got from Isaac. He thought he did. Except that Isaac gave it to him as Esau, not as a Jacob. So the heart is still whole, has still an emptiness, has a hole, and was wondering how and when can he get the real blessing, and this time maybe he could. So when they were wrestling, it was a powerful match because it's a long match. The sun is almost coming up. And then the angel said, I have to go, let me go. And then Jacob says, I will only let you go if you what? Bless me. The cry and tears of Jacob. And the angel was touched. But before blessing Jacob, the angel asked Jacob, what is your name? Do you know that there is another person who asked Jacob, what is your name? Who's that person? The father. Well, the first time, Jacob didn't believe that he's good enough, so he has to say Esau. This time, he still doesn't believe that he's good enough, but at least he's honest. With tears, he said, Jacob. And he was blessed. But you know what kind of blessing that he experienced? Then Jacob was changed. You know that Jacob is associated with liar or cheater, deceiver. It was changed to something else. Israel. Now, what does Israel mean? Does Israel mean true, faithful, pure? No. You know what Israel means? The one who wrestles with God. Meaning the journey continues. The journey continues. It's a continuing walk through the valley of the shadow of death. But the beautiful thing is, it's pure, it's authentic, it's real. It's not fake. It's not Jacob pretending to be Esau. It is Jacob being Jacob. Finally, first Jacob thought that I need to be someone else, when the real journey is I need to be me. I need to be me. So if you're building belief, the lies that Satan has been feeding us, brothers and sisters, through that lens, there is a great desire to be someone else. But once that is destroyed and broken, we will continue a path to pursue what God has intended us to be. I'm Geof with one F. At first, I was resentful. I was born where Clark Air Base, U.S. base, military base. And my mom felt like, I'm going to give you an American name. So he chose the word Jeffrey. Sounds American. But when I realized this is not how you spell Jeffrey. Jeffrey has 2 F's. My mom only picked 1 F, and I felt like she doesn't even know how to spell Jeffrey. This is a fake name. Number 1, it's not a Filipino name. Number 2, it's a pretend to be an American name. That kind of insecurity, I was carrying that. But you know what? Today, I'm very happy and blessed that I only have 1 F in my name, because there are not many Jeffreys with just 1 F. My uniqueness is still there, and I have to pursue that. So brothers and sisters, I'm going to ask Max to eventually come here, but just want to emphasize, B is the reason why we experience C. It's not A. It's not the activating event, but the belief that we have. If someone criticizes you, right, in church, and you feel like, how dare he do that, and then you feel anger or despair or fear, that's the activating event. There's already a belief system in your mind that's causing you to feel bad. Okay? So don't rush and do and act out right away. But let me talk a little bit about D here, because this is what's going to free us, okay? D is the part of the emptiness I was talking about. This is a time to discern and understand what the feeling is telling us. So if you feel like anger, there is always a message underneath that. The message is not, hit that guy because, he's making fun of you. Sometimes we think that that's anger. The anger is something is crossed. A boundary has been crossed. But that doesn't necessarily give you the freedom to hit back, but just to recognize the value of who you are as a person. You feel that because you have value, and then appreciate the fact that you have all of a sudden feeling this, I have my relationship with myself. I respect others, and therefore others need to respect me, and I have to respect myself as well. Now you're trying to discern why you have that kind of feelings, right? And then you determine if there is a belief that skewed or construed something that the way you see things, because what you see is not always the reality. We are not operating in a vacuum. We are coming from certain histories. Sometimes they are not helpful. Okay? So it's very important for us to determine the belief. And then we dispute the belief. We dispute the belief. So if the belief says, I need to be For example, my form of addiction, I can only matter in this world if I'm competent. That's not true. I have to dispute that. There was a time in my life where my friends start hating me because I know everything. Because I keep myself, equipping myself, thinking that if I know everything, maybe I would matter in this world. I was just trying to cope. But I realized how ugly I could become, by just acting out that way. I have to dispute. I have to embrace a humiliating fact that I don't know everything, and a truth that even if I don't know everything, my friends would still love me. My family would still love me. It's not the end of the world. And then, finally, I would like to, I'm just going to skip those one and go to E now. Emotive enlightenment. Have you caught yourself asking the big why? So, there was a drama, for example, in a church or in a party, and you're involved and you're acting out, you're very angry, and then you got home, and the question now comes to your mind, why did I behave in such way? You thought that's a question. That's actually a statement. A statement that says, I'm not supposed to be behaving that way. Then you are angry at yourself, right? Because that's the wrong why. An emotive enlightenment goes like this. It has a little bit more compassion towards self. So if you see yourself doing the things you don't like, there's a reason why. We're all wounded. So instead of asking why did I behave such, just add this word, wonder. I wonder why I did this. I wonder why I did that. I wonder. Because without the word wonder, it could be a judgment. But with the wonder, it could become curiosity. It has a room to understand yourself compassionately. Sometimes I know someone who's always cursing at herself, What's happening? What's up? What? No, I just remember something. Do you have those kind of moment? You're angry at yourself because, why did I behave that way? Shameful. What if the question is, yeah, I behaved that way. I wonder why. What was underneath? What was my pain? Same thing for those who are addicted and can't go outside their addiction. That's why it's called addiction. If you only ask why do you do that? Why can't you get out of this? They don't know why. But if you try to understand and listen, the pain, because the question is not what is the addiction, the question is what is the pain? I wonder what's the pain. We all have pains. And once we identify the pain, we can be compassionate towards self. Be gracious towards self. If you find grace towards self, you'll be surprised. You will be gracious towards others. If you can't take someone and it's getting to your nerves, it's because maybe you don't have enough grace towards yourself. It's just the equation that Jesus mentioned in the second greatest commandment. Love thy neighbor as thyself. So brothers and sisters, there is a wonderful opportunity for us all to grow and heal. Okay? So I'm going to ask Max here to wrap this up with us through the materials that you've been working on. Dear loving Father in heaven, thank you for giving us this day where we could, together as a family, support one another and reflect back, reflect within and understand, and sometimes fail to understand our past, but help us to learn and continue to grow and continue to shine through your grace. In Jesus' name, amen.